Greetings everyone, and welcome to the AI World Summit 2020, organized by MyFinB Group. We'd like to thank you for attending this session today entitled Manufacturing 4.0, AI and Automation Strategies for Manufacturers Across the Supply Chain. Here is the background. As global supply chains are becoming more complex amidst the disruptive effects of COVID-19, the room for any inefficiencies becomes a matter of survival. Manufacturers need to maximize productivity and minimize costs by taking on new technologies and processes. Key questions remain: how could AI perform demand forecasting, production planning, and predictive maintenance? How would AI-led tools help plan contingency events? This track reveals the power of AI in transforming the manufacturing landscape and revolutionizing the supply chain management for the next decade. We are deeply honored today to have our panel of speakers from the US, Malaysia, and Singapore. This session is chaired and moderated by Peter Kwa, who is based in Malaysia. Peter Kwa is the head of data science at our EV Media Group, formerly Media Prima Digital. Our esteemed panelists comprise of Tony Nash, CEO and founder of Complete Intelligence; Tanyet Mi, the founder and director of Maypreen SDN, BHD. Last but not least, we have Dr. Ahmad Magid, Executive Director at Management Development Institute of Singapore, MDIS, former Secretary General of Singapore Manufacturing Federation. Without much further ado, I leave the digital stage to the chairperson and moderator of this track to continue our track session. Over to you, Peter.
Hello guys, good afternoon and welcome to track 11, where we will discuss manufacturing 4.0, AI and automation strategies for manufacturers across the supply chain. Now, as what the host just said, right, we know that global supply chains are becoming more complex, and what more with the effects of COVID-19, the room for any inefficiencies become a matter of survival. Manufacturers need to maximize productivity and minimize cost by taking on new technologies and processes. And one of the key questions is, how AI can transform the manufacturing landscape. So my name is Peter Kwa, and I'll be moderating this topic. And together with me are three very distinguished panelists, Dr. Ahmad Magad, Tanyet Mi, and Tony Nash. They come from very diverse backgrounds and experience. And my very short introduction to them, will not do any justice to their very interesting resumes. And I will let each of them spend about 10 to 15 minutes on individual presentations before moving on to the Q&A. So first up, we have Dr. Ahmad Magad. He is currently the Executive Director of the Management Development Institute of Singapore, which delivers academic programs at the diploma, undergrad, and postgrad levels. In fact, he recently retired as Secretary General of the Singapore Manufacturing Federation. He was also an elected member of the Singapore Parliament, where he served 15 years, Gosh, I didn't even know that. So Dr. Ahmad Magad currently holds a doctorate in business admin from Henley Business School of Reading University in the UK, as well as an MBA and advanced postgrad diploma in management consultancy. He is a fellow member of CE.A.I Australia, the Chartered Institute of Marketing UK, and Singapore Institute of Directors. He is a distinguished fellow of the Management Development Institute of Singapore. Dr. Magad was also awarded the Walter L. Hurd Executive Medal by the Asia Pacific Quality Organization in New Zealand for his contribution to the quality movement in Singapore and internationally. So Doctor, over to you for your presentation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Peter, for that comprehensive introduction.
Most welcome.
Good afternoon to all. Once again, my name is Ahmad Magad, and I'm representing the Management Development Institute of Singapore, as already introduced by Peter. We are a 64-year-old private education provider of diploma and degree programs from undergraduate all the way to doctorate levels, in conjunction with renowned UK, Australian, and US universities. I'm delighted also to share that MDIS runs degree programs in manufacturing and industrial engineering, which cover Industry 4.0 and artificial intelligence in the curriculums. We welcome students of all age groups into our programs. Now, as most of us are aware, radical change is happening around us, brought about not only by the pandemic, but also by rapid technological changes, which contribute to what economists today term as a VUCA world, a world of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. In manufacturing today, flexibility and increasingly customized production and logistics are becoming prerequisites to remain competitive. The advent of Industry 4.0 is offering infinite opportunities for businesses, whether they are large or small, multinational companies or SMEs, in a very unprecedented manner. Industry 4.0, or also known as the fourth industrial revolution, is in fact blurring the lines between the physical, digital, and biological spheres. Industry 4.0 integrates the digital world with conventional processes and services with the potential to create significant intelligent value networks. Conventional process and operation technologies converge with information and digital technologies across many industries to bring about intelligent ways of optimizing resources in connected ecosystems. So how are all this made possible? A key enabler is the incorporation of artificial intelligence, or AI, into digital technologies. Although AI is complex and is challenging to integrate, it is taking center stage in many fields. It is transformative and will change almost everything in the longer term. Thomas Davenport, in his book, The AI Advantage, cites cognitive technologies as another term for AI. That is, it represents mechanisms that endow machines with human capabilities. AI employs these technologies to execute some tasks that humans cannot perform efficiently. For example, identification of images or predicting when moving parts of a machine are about to break down so that the machine could be serviced before it actually gives way. Industry 4.0 today represents a major paradigm shift from centralized to decentralized smart manufacturing. So what is changing? If the buzzword of the past is to design products for manufacturability, AI in manufacturing is now about unconstrained design. It enables the co-creation of products between manufacturers and customers through algorithmic design optimization. For example, the blades of an aircraft engine today are co-designed between aircraft producers such as Boeing and Airbus and engine manufacturers such as Rolls-Royce and General Electric to be made much lighter by incorporating webs inside the fan blades instead of a solid piece, which significantly lightens the weight of the overall engine and which in turn enables not only expensive aircraft fuel to be saved because it is lighter, but also allows for longer flight distances. Mass high volume production has given way to mass customization thanks to the advent of additive manufacturing or 3D printing. Its limited tooling requirements, fewer process steps, and lesser production equipment required has allowed for more flexible designs and shorter lead times. The digital versatility and quick prototyping of 3D printing empowers a swift mobilization of the technology and therefore a rapid response to emergencies, such as what happened when China first implemented a sweeping lockdown earlier this year as COVID-19 spreads like wildfire in Wuhan, which happens to be a center of precision part sourcing, which disrupted many supply chains. It enabled critical parts to be manufactured on demand by any decentralized 3D printing facility in the region, while quickly developing operational agility in a world of disrupted supply chains. Complex supply chains are gradually transforming into supply unchained, enabled by and large, again, by artificial intelligence, which allows for more distributed production and reshoring and multi-component consolidation of parts for on-location production. In other words, it paves the way for smaller micro-factories to produce parts more flexibly, utilizing robots and additive manufacturing techniques. For example, automobile production was typically based by and large on mold production. 3D printing helps to reduce costs of manufacturing difficult and complex components while also allowing for improved capability in the vehicles without increasing costs. All of what I've just outlined will lead to changes in the global value chains arising from the increasing use of labor-saving technologies. Research and development of new products, typically performed in high-income economies, can directly deploy production within their respective boundaries, which does away with the need to outsource production to lower or middle-income economies. This, regrettably and inevitably, will result in such economies being deprived of the benefit of knowledge transfer and also correspondingly export-led manufacturing and economic growth. The other downside is it may result in increased unemployment and loss in value and also jobs creation opportunities in these developing economies. It is therefore imperative for such countries to embark on vocational learning with high digitalization content so that they can embrace new technologies to enable them to develop competencies in current relevant technologies to adapt to the rapidly changing VUCA world. Manufacturing companies tend to use AI in three general areas. The most common one, which all of us know, is process automation. This is where robotic process automation is employed for repetitive tasks, transferring data between systems or updating and reconciling systems. It is the cheapest and easiest form of AI to implement. Second is cognitive insight, where AI is used to generate apps that use algorithms to identify data patterns and help the users to interpret the data. Examples include analyzing data to predict tool wear, for instance, in a machine shop, that enables timely intervention by the machinist to adjust machining parameters or to replace the tool, and also in the case of predictive maintenance of equipment. Third is cognitive engagement, where AI is employed for round-the-clock customer service, where robots would respond to calls and answer simple questions. The system is typically heuristic, meaning that they're able to learn by themselves and progressively respond to increasingly more difficult situations. To become a cognitive company, it needs to understand the technologies that would best suit the tasks that are intended to be executed, and also to build on its data analyzing capabilities. Internal and external objectives need to be considered, such as customer profiling to better understand their needs, or extracting real-time production data and information for better business efficiency. With the disruptive experience of the pandemic, firms are now seeking new avenues to diversify their supply chains, while businesses are relying even more on big data for decision-making and network sensors and devices for tasks like inventory management and shipment monitoring. AI is poised to change everything from process automation to real-time data visibility. As part of supply chain, for instance, the trade documentation process, where it is one example where it is making an impact. Traditional processes require thousands, if not millions, of data elements in paper documents. These documents are often issued by different companies and manually reviewed in a very slow, time-consuming process. To improve this step, Standard Chartered teamed up with IBM in 2019 to develop the Trade AI engine. This enables shipping documents to be converted into digital formats, and through continuous machine learning, data elements are reclassified to further improve accuracy, while at the same time contributes to higher documentation processing efficiency. Nevertheless, in order for supply chains to keep pace with demand for higher speed and transparency, it is essential for business leaders to anticipate how emerging technologies will impact their operations and should demonstrate willingness to innovate in their approach. From RPA to AI analytics solutions, keeping ahead of the technology curve also means maintaining a competitive edge. So with that, I think my time should be up now, Peter. Let me turn it back to you, our moderator, Mr. Peter Kwa. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad Magad, for the very interesting insights on how AI impacts the supply chain. Now, next we have Tan Yat Mi presenting. Yat Mi actually holds an MBA from the Heriot Watt University and a degree in economics from the National University of Malaysia. Her passion in life is to help create opportunities for women empowerment through education and entrepreneurship. She was actually featured in the Women Lead in the Digital Economy, the integration of technology into women's businesses in Cambodia, Singapore, Malaysia, and Myanmar, published by the Momentum Cambodia and the Embassy of France, Cambodia. So Yat Mi started her own manufacturing company in 2007, doing original design manufacturing for multinationals like SC Johnson. And in 2018, right, she launched an eco-friendly range of household detergent, which is currently exported to Vietnam and India. Impressive. So she is also a master practitioner of NLP and has co-authored an anthology of short stories entitled Fault Lines, which was published by Silverfish Books in 2015. So Yat Mi, over to you. You can go ahead and share your screen right now.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Dr. Ahmad Magad. That was very informative. I'm going to share my screen now.
Sure.
Is this okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Except I can't see my screen.
Can you hover over your PowerPoint?
Okay.
And then full screen it, because currently we are seeing your web browser.
Is it okay?
No.
Oh, sorry. Full screen it?
Okay, there you go.
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. Thank you to MyFinB for this very wonderful summit. I have been attending since the beginning, the first day, and it's been very, very informative. Just a short, yes?
Your PowerPoint. Can you full screen it?
Is it better? Better now? Okay.
Better.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. So yeah, so I'm just going to talk very briefly about my company and the journey that we have been through. We launched our own eco-friendly product in 2018, and because we really believe in sustainability in the laundry business, we've come across in our experience that there are some ingredients in it that we believe is not so suitable and not so friendly to the environment or to the consumers. So, and we have high aspirations for our company in terms of practicing sustainability, and we hope to be able to practice to a level where we are qualified to be B Corp company. So we started, as Peter mentioned, that we created a product for SC Johnson, and then from there on we created other products. But the eco-friendly thing came about around 6 years ago, when we decided that we want to just create another laundry detergent, but a laundry detergent that probably makes cleaning a little bit different. So this is a little bit of self-promotion here for the product. It's called Echo Minim. Minim, because what goes around comes around, and it's a kind of a note of warning, a musical note of warning to everybody that if we don't take care of the world or the earth, it's going to come back and haunt us eventually. So a brief history of Mayprin's journey is that we started in 2007, and in 2018, we launched our own product. We, of course, started off semi-auto, automated, and then we did some digitization and digitalization, and we went e-commerce. But in 2020, or around the end of 2019 and beginning of 2020, things took a different turn. We started exporting. There was the opportunity to export, although it's just on a very small scale as a starting basis. And we've realized that we have a lot to learn in terms of marketing, in terms of distribution. Just so many things to learn. The whole business for us has changed beyond just a brand, beyond just manufacturing. We've gone into brand ownership, right? That's when we realized the need for AI. Before that, it was just a huge word that we hear often, big data and everything, but we don't know what it is about. So when we changed our business, our business changed, we realized that we had a lot of changing needs. Production, in terms of production, machine breakdown, rising cost of raw materials, cost of maintenance, market information, how do we manage distributors, how do we manage information about different markets, how do we build a brand, and then of course, accuracy and repetitive jobs became more burdened. We needed more accurate information, and right now it's very, very just digitized, just Excel sheets and stuff like that, which works if it works on Mercedes-Benz bus factory. I guess it works for us, but I think there needs to be a little bit more to it than what we see. And then of course, pivot speed. When COVID hit, like most manufacturers, of course we are hit. And we realized that we need to change. We need to create products that were addressing the needs of the community and the world. And do we have the resources to change? What do we change to? What business models should we adapt? We don't have sufficient information. So we just do the rudimentary best that we can. Decision making, of course, quick, accurate decisions based on correct, up-to-date info becomes questionable to us. You know what I mean? We don't doubt our own information, but there is so much more that I believe we need to know. So yes, we did incur loss of sales, higher operating costs, and costly marketing activities, and not always yielding the necessary results. In fact, not at all. So we then met up with MyFinB, our tech partner, and we realized from conversations with them that we need smart technology, and they can help us link back-end manufacturing with efficient operations. And then that we can set up, an AI technology that helps us in terms of most importantly, I think supply chain analysis as well as the back-end factory, but supply chain analysis in this case is quite crucial. So, this is just a standard approach and methodology, I think, that everybody uses, natural language processing, machine learning, to detect problems and bottlenecks, cognitive analytics, and all this sentiment analysis. And the objective that we really want to achieve here is, as a factory, we need to know what kind of data that we need to collect and how much data we need to collect in order to know the market, our consumers, our customers, our competitors, and everybody else. And then in analytical modules, we need to know how we could, get our production will get us sufficient information that enables us to produce according to our customers' needs. And this will then help us to supply products that is more cost effective and addresses their needs more accurately. And then we are also hopefully able to predict a demand or a shortage in raw materials, for instance. And also planning of materials and stuff like that. The other thing that would help us a lot would be also the, recognizing when are the downtimes, where is the quality issue where is the quality issue occurring? Because, quality is a very important factor for us. That is how we believe AI will really help us. Of course, customer profiling, I think there is a standard profiling we believe is in the market that we are studying in the market, but we don't really know how each of our customer really feels. And that's what we want to really nail down to better and better improve our products, because our products are new. There's still a lot of question. We are not using the conventional formulations. We have created formulations that differs from the norm. You know, for instance, not using SLES, which we believe is detrimental, can cause long-term side effects to people and the environment. So we need to know more accurately how the consumers are perceiving our products, right? Budget always, we need to always know to keep on top of things, because creating eco-friendly products means moving away from conventional, more economical ingredients to different types of ingredients. Consumer insights, yes, never enough information. We need to work on that so much. And then industry and market insights. I think that more and more people are embarking on sustainability, and more people are going on this greenwash, you know, sometimes greenwashing the brand. So we need more information so that we can really address it and differentiate ourselves from our competitors. So we have this vision, you know. Sometimes my mother would say we have a head that's smaller than, we have a head that is smaller than, bigger than our head. So we are very passionate about this, and I'm especially passionate about laundry detergent for people with sensitive skin, because it is our belief that in the long run, over the years, because they have been using ingredients that's not so friendly to the skin, people have a lot of sensitive skin issues. I think 1 out of 10 people you speak to would know someone, or they themselves have some skin issues. So my dream would be, you know, one day we can use AI to, you know, just do an augmented reality test of skin dryness, which enables people to you know, identify whether or not they need to move on to a different product, or they tell us their needs, and then we can customize our products to address their issues, their problems. You know, create a successful AI model is of course important to us. And we hope that our AI model would be sustainable, would help us to create a sustainability and traceability in our operations. And sustainability is such a huge subject these days, and I think it's a very important subject. Recently, I read somewhere that half of Malaysian SMEs are not digitally ready, and I think it's true. And basically, I think as a small company coming into AI, I think one of the things that we really need to look at is infrastructurally, are we ready? And I think that a lot of people would probably have the same. Are we ready in terms of storage, networking, security, cost-effective solutions, you know, buying machinery and stuff like that. And then, and I think very importantly, I think management needs to really embrace it. They need to understand what AI really means, instead of just looking at numbers, and what AI should be used to tell the story, the full story of the brand, how it wants to move forward, and what it can do for the people. Ability to adapt to changes, you know, priorities, because as an SME, we are very practical people. We just look at how do we pay the next bill, and what's the most important thing we need to buy, what's going to create the best results. But I think we need to learn, sometimes we need to invest a little bit more, and it takes a little bit of time, but the financial gain in the end, or the benefits in the end, not just financial, is a lot more. And then also, you know, government support and policies. I think right now, Malaysia's government is really pushing for AI Industry 4.0. You know, every other day you get a call from an agency or so. But I think in the overall infrastructure of support, in terms of education to the governing, to the, it's probably not so, I feel not so probably cohesive. That's just my personal opinion. And then shortage of digital talents. And the one thing that I think I would worry is whether I would get really good people to work on this. And, you know, because I mean, AI is just rubbish in, rubbish out. If you're not careful with the kind of information that is being analyzed or used or inputted, we're not going to be able to use that effectively. And I don't know whether the education system is really training enough people. And I know the earlier presentation, one presenter actually said that she's a robotics creator, and that they only look for PhDs, you know. So, well, that would be one of the issues. And then how to complement, you know, but I think more importantly is also how do we complement the current workforce? People are losing jobs and stuff like that. I think AI will no doubt replace people, but people are still needed. And I think it's more important to see how we can complement the current workforce, can we train them? Can we, use the knowledge that the older staff have, and then can it be used differently? Is there going to be sufficient transfer of knowledge? So we then close that knowledge gap, and then also retraining people so that they can now work instead of just looking at simple repetitive jobs. They look at the different kind of values, skill sets, different kind of skill sets. So this is my dream factory. I've always envisioned one day my chemists or researchers will be using a wearable like a Google Map specs, and they'll be just looking at testing the what you might call viscosity of the product or the color ratio and stuff like that, and without lifting a finger, you know. So I don't. For me, AI and manufacturing is inevitable. I think it's something we have to embrace, and embrace with a big heart, wholeheartedly. But we must not forget, I think, because we have to be mindful to align our corporate values with the AI transformation always, and to always use it for the greater good. Because we mustn't forget the movie A.I, when the predictive or prescriptive AI overtook human beings. And I think it may never come to that, but I think if we don't watch it, it may not yield the best results that we can. That's just my take on that. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yetmi, for the very interesting insight on your own manufacturing journey and how you plan to incorporate IR 4.0 and AI into your own factory. In fact, I mean, you're so right. You know, COVID-19 has shown that a lot of SMEs, especially SMEs in Malaysia, they are definitely not prepared digitally at all. And next up, and finally, we have Tony Nash presenting. Tony is the CEO and founder of Complete Intelligence. Previously, he built and led the global research business for the Economist and the Asia consulting business for IHS, now known as IHS Market. He has also been a social and media entrepreneur, writer, and consultant. Tony is a public speaker and a leader of closed-door dialogues with business and government leaders on markets, economics, risk, and technology. He is a frequent contributor to leading global media like BBC, CNBC, and Bloomberg, and has served as an advisor to government and think tanks in Tokyo, Singapore, Beijing, and Washington, D.C. So Tony is an international advisory board member for Texas A&M University and a non-executive director with Credit Microfinance Bank in Cambodia. He has a master's degree in international relations from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University, and a BA in business management from Texas A&M University. So over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks very much for the opportunity, and thanks to MyFinB for asking me to speak today. I really appreciate this. Today, what I'd really like to talk about is how we're helping companies use artificial intelligence and machine learning to better plan their manufacturing businesses, both on the cost side and on the revenue side. We'll talk a little bit about some case studies. We'll talk a little bit about kind of what the issues with the status quo kind of ways of doing this are, and then we'll talk a little bit about what exactly we're doing with our products. So really what we're trying to do is help companies become more profitable. We have built an artificial intelligence platform to focus on cost and revenue planning. I started the company in Singapore. I lived in Singapore for 15 years. A few years ago, I moved back to the US. We're now based in Houston, Texas. There's a lot of oil and gas and manufacturing companies in the central US and southeastern US. So we're really helping those companies here in the US. More specifically, sorry about this. There we go. You know, what we've seen as we've entered the pandemic, or as we've gone through the pandemic, we've seen a much more focused intention on planning. People have realized that we're in a very volatile environment. That's probably not going away anytime soon. Of course, we're not in constant volatility, we have intermittent volatility, and the human approach to understanding the future simply seems to, in many cases, extrapolate today into kind of forever. We're using machine learning to better understand how companies can look at costs at a very granular level, and how they can look at their revenue planning at a very granular level. As Yetmi mentioned, there are not many companies who are prepared for this. In fact, Gartner says 87% of companies aren't prepared for basic analytics and business intelligence, much less artificial intelligence. So some of our more recent activities, right now we're working with a global chemicals firm. And what we've done is we've taken data directly from their ERP system. We've helped them at a very granular level with their product revenues by geography, by very local geography, understanding what their sales will be by month over a forecast horizon, say 12 to 24 months. We've brought their revenue planning error down for that product to 4.4%. So we're helping them understand really pretty closely to actual what will happen with their revenue and when it will happen. We're also working with an Australian mining firm. They mine copper and gold and silver and a number of other things. We've helped them reduce their planning for their gold forecast by 38%. We've done similar activities for copper, high 20s. What this helps them do is better plan when to bring their goods to market, better plan the revenues based upon the volume of say, material that comes out of their mining sites, and better report their numbers to public markets. So our chemicals firm client, their share price has risen by 3 times in 2020. Our mining firm client, their share price risen by 2 times in 2020. So our clients are seeing some real results from the work that we're doing for them. Today, there are a number of problems with planning. So industry forecasts, so industry experts, consensus error, this is say investment banks, economists, say industry expert firms who know metals or agriculture goods or something like that. They typically have an error rate of about 20%. And this is on an absolute percent basis. So if you're buying industry forecasts to understand the price of steel or zinc or wheat or something, those typically have an error rate of 20%. In many cases, it's more than that. Our clients on the procurement side tell us that even for basic materials, their pricing forecasts can be, say, 30% off on an absolute percentage error basis. So as planning teams within companies, as buyers, as strategists look at markets, there really isn't a precise view of where their costs will go or where revenues will go. And that's where we come in. We have a number of products where we've trained our models to understand how markets will move, and how companies can best plan transactions and plan activities based upon where their revenues will go and where their costs will go. Our off-the-shelf product has about 800 assets across commodities, currencies, and equity indices that we forecast twice a month. We've trained our models based upon all of these activities. And then as clients come in, they typically work within, say, the 1,400 industry sectors that we have our models trained on. The other part of the planning process is kind of the spreadsheet aspect of it. We work with major multinational firms and some small, mid-sized multinational firms. There are hundreds or thousands of spreadsheets moving around these organizations with differing approaches, differing conclusions. And what typically happens in planning meetings is there's really a kind of a verbal agreement rather than an analytical agreement on how the company will go forward. And we're really helping companies come to a data-driven conclusion and recommendations around when they should take these transactions. Okay. So here's what we're doing. We're taking data directly from clients. We've partnered with Microsoft, we've partnered with Oracle and others to actually bring our capabilities to market. We use data directly out of a client's ERP system and other systems. We take it within our environment. We have billions of our own data items and publicly available data items within our environment. And then we deliver the data directly to the client's context. So how do they need to make those decisions? What are they looking at? And in what context are they looking at those decisions? And we just want to fit into their workflow so that they can plan better, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's the sales cycle, whether it's capital expenditure planning, and so on. On the product side, our main product right now is called CI Futures. CI Futures is a subscription product where we're looking at commodities, equities, currency indices. We have a number of clients who layer custom assets into here, whether it's, say, plastics or packaging, or we have one client who has us forecasting their sugar costs globally. They're a European confectioner. So we take in data from them every month. We help them understand where those prices will be so they can not only come up with their procurement strategies, but also come up with their hedging strategies for those raw materials. On the enterprise planning side, we have two different services, one called Cost Flow. Cost Flow is a structured bill of material. We show costs from, say, the business unit level, so a chief procurement officer or somebody from FP&A or a CFO can understand where costs are going according to budget across the organization. We go all the way down to the bill of material, which you can see an image of a structured bill of material on the screen. And then we go below that to the components and the elements. So everyone is looking at the same interface, not just for historical data and business intelligence, so that they can see where things are going on a future basis, all the way down to the granular level that they're looking at for procurement. On the revenue side, we look at product sales at different geographies. It can be a city level or a country level. We look at it across business units so that all of this kind of sums up to a greater whole globally. So whether it's a regional business unit or a product business unit, we're helping people understand how their sales on a month-by-month basis will match up with their costs on a month-by-month basis. Both of these activities today we're selling and working with clients on. The user interface and these things will be worked on with in 2021, and we'll release them early in the first half of 2021. All of this stuff, whether it's cost flow or revenue flow or CI Futures, uses the same engine, the same cognitive global system to make these decisions and inform our clients for their cost and revenue decisions. So really what we're helping people do is do more with less. Some of our clients, there's a major manufacturing firm here in the US that has, I think, 40 people fully dedicated to revenue forecasts. Those people can be used for much more interesting things aside from working in Excel spreadsheets all day. On the procurement side, there are analysts, there are buyers, there are product people who spend a huge portion of their day in Excel spreadsheets and trying to understand cost directions. We're helping people take those resources, focus on the core business and do more with less. We're helping people increase operating margins and even look at their market cap. So these publicly traded companies, it doesn't take much on the savings side and on the revenue delivery side, given equity market multiples, for stock prices to rise, given the changes that we can help them make. So we complement a lot of the other physical aspects of the Industry 4.0 environment by helping with the planning process months ahead of time. So thanks very much. I really appreciate the time today, Peter.
Thanks, Tony, and thank you very much to all of you for your very insightful presentations. And now we will move on to the Q&A, and I see a lot of questions from the participants. Sorry, from the attendees. But first of all, right now, question to all three of you. Yeah. Now, after listening to all your presentations, right, my first question is really, what does the factory of the future look like to all of you? You know. Maybe Dr. Ahmad Magat, maybe you can go first.
Okay, I think let's look at the internet that we have today. We all know that it is a driver of radical change, and in today's context, it is becoming more and more relevant for manufacturing as it has been also for humans for several decades now. So in harnessing the combined power of the internet, digitalization, and AI, the factory of the future will have the awesome power to efficiently customize products, produce products locally, reliably, and cheaply, employing robotics process automation, as I said earlier on, and AI, which in most cases enable the replication of the human senses. This in turn does away with the need for stationing multiple human labor, as much of the work can now be done automatically by smart robots. This means that customers can conveniently order individually customized, configured products just by the click of a mouse and expect quick deliveries. To realize such a vision, I think manufacturers must be prepared to keep up with and invest in digitalization and AI technologies as they evolve and as they become more efficient. Production will be much quicker and more cost-effective if via the internet technology we could network all these elements in the production processes. You get greater flexibility that way by also involving employees in the processes, by empowering them with help of smart assistance systems, and all this could be done through the incorporation of AI so that they can focus on higher level and higher value jobs. That's my take.
Thanks, Doctor. What about you, Yatmi? What is your take on the factory of the future? Yatmi, you're muted.
Actually, the factory of the future, I believe, will have all the necessary automations that with the technology. But I think it is also going to be a factory to merge human and the computer side. And it is also not just going to be looking at the dashboard, just looking at what's happening within the operations, but they are able to work remotely and see beyond. They're able to, for instance, stock take at a distributor or a retail, and then they're able to use the information straight away and then immediately plan the manufacturing and the raw materials and everything so that they can then fulfill the requirement of the customers. And I think it will be very efficient. There'll be not so much people around, but the people who are there will be highly skilled, and they will need to be more analytical, more.
Yatmi, you are muted.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. I thought the admin muted me. Sorry. So I think it will be a place where people are skilled and then they are able to use information in a way that is cost effective and very, very quickly.
That's interesting. Thank you, Yatmi. What about you, Tony? What is your take on the factory of the future and how does it look like to you?
Hi, Peter. I think one of the first steps of the factory of the future is companies really looking at their own data today. Data governance is a great first step for factories to start to understand how they can better develop, say, a machine-driven environment If you don't have good data on what you've done in the past and how you do things today, it's going to be very difficult to transition into a next generation factory. So I think the factory of tomorrow or the factory of the future really starts today with executives in firms understanding how they capture data, how they capture their processes, and how they can, understand where to automate, and understand what those steps are to get there. So it is, of course, highly automated, but there are a lot of things we do, we did 20, 30 years ago or 50 years ago that we just don't do today. So that's really it. I think it has a lot to do with understanding what we do, documenting what we do, and checking out the data and making sure we have good data. When we work with customers for their own, say, cost and revenue data, we find that in some cases, 30 to 40% of the data, the historical data that they have is unusable. Meaning it hasn't been recorded consistently, it hasn't been recorded properly. Those AP people or people in finance or people in operations haven't really taken the data seriously. It's an inconvenience. And so it makes the starting points of that transition very, very difficult. So I would say executives really need to start today on data governance and documentation to understand where they can go in the future.
Thank you so much. So my other question would be, how can the IR 4.0 and AI cut across the supply chain and lead to competitive advantage? For example, having superior manufacturing capabilities, and most importantly, customer satisfaction. Would you guys have any success stories to share? Tony?
Sorry, Peter, can you repeat the question? I was reading the Q&A.
Oh, okay, so my question is, how can the Industry Revolution 4 and AI, cut across the supply chain and lead to competitive advantage? For example, having superior manufacturing capabilities, and of course, most importantly, customer satisfaction. Would you guys, have any success stories to share?
Yeah, look, so when we look at, well, we have one customer who, using our data, better understood the pricing environment for the products that they were bringing to market. And they realized that, gosh, they just raised their prices for one of their products by something like 80%. So they're capturing a lot more revenue, of course, and margin based upon better understanding the dynamics of their environment and how much revenue they could capture. Their customers are happy, and they're a more profitable company. So, that's one way where by better understanding the environment and automating some of these decisions rather than sticking with the human bias of previous ways of doing things, they can actually be more profitable and their customers are just as happy or happier.
Okay, what about you, Dr. Ahmad Magad?
Yeah, if you're asking me about an example of successful organization with superior manufacturing capability, I can relate it to a US company that I was associated with for 30 years. The company is a specialist in infrared technology. We make products for infrared applications. The success of the future is really predicated on producing high quality products. And that is something that we breathe in, we preach day in, day out to all the employees. We have charts all over the shop floor, even in our sales offices, really showing the importance of high quality, and our customers know that very well. So time and again, although we are not the cheapest producer of those products, infrared products, the customers, after even moving away from us in search of cheaper sources of supply, find themselves ultimately coming back to us because what they know is the fact that when they buy our products, it will 100% work in their laser machines, you know. So to build superior products, you really need superior manufacturing capability. And in our case, we have invested significantly not only to put smart manufacturing into our shop floors, but also incorporated quite a bit of AI in many forms. Everything from, you know, raw material traceability to sorting of products in the manufacturing floor to ultimately tracking how the products are delivered to our customers in the supply chain. And it doesn't stop there. We also follow up with very regular customer inquiry, asking them about how the products work in their machines, work with them in new product development to make sure that they are also capable of regularly improving the performance of their machines. So I think that's the complete value chain of service that we offer, which has resulted really in customer delight and customer satisfaction.
Thanks, Doctor. What about you, Yatmi? Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think for me, if how AI would really help would be if we, for instance, cognitive engagement, right? If we have a chat bot, for instance, that's able to quickly communicate with the customer's inquiry, I think that would solve a lot of, that would actually result in a lot of sales, in more sales, because the customer can make quick decisions. They don't have to wait 24 hours or 48 hours, for instance, over a weekend in order to get a response from us. And yeah, essentially, I think it's the quickest way that we can get information to customers, and also the ability to answer their needs, preempt their needs in order to answer it. I think that will really help a lot. And I think the AI intelligence should be able to help us do that.
Great. Now I'm going to take a question from an anonymous attendee. His question is, can you give instances where AI helps in improving customer loyalty and bottom line? I think manufacturers need that, especially those with distribution and retail points. Yeah, maybe Yatmi, perhaps you can answer this.
Yeah. Is because AI, as we all understand it, is that it's able to track down the needs of each individual customer, right? So when you are able to understand their needs and their requirements and their pain points, and as well as maybe their shopping habits, then you will be able to target your needs quite individual to a very highly individualized need. You are able to target you're able to answer their needs to an individual. And therefore, if a person's needs has already been answered, I think naturally they would be loyal to a customer. And I think when you understand the customer and the customer trusts in you and they are comfortable with the kind of service that you give them, loyalty is therefore built. That's my take.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think AI, and I mean, like what Yatmi answered, right? I think AI is really, really good in retaining customers as well as building customer loyalty. So my next question is, we all know that the journey towards smart manufacturing, right, has not been easy, right? Otherwise, we would have seen widespread adoption around the world. Now the question is, what do you think are some of the issues or barriers with respect to realizing IR4 for manufacturers? Tony?
Yeah, that's a great question, Peter. I think the main issue that we see is human bias. So people are accustomed to doing something a certain way. for example, a company has a vendor that they've bought raw material X from for 5 years or 10 years or something. Or they, there are sales processes or sales, say, expectations that are put together through a negotiating process internally, right? But there are a number of ways that human biases get involved in all business processes, and it really holds companies back. So what we're demonstrating to people is that by cutting out that human bias, we can actually help them either optimize decisions or kind of come close to optimizing decisions, rather than relying on, a vendor you've had for a long time. Maybe you rely partly on them and diversify to kind of a better price, same quality environment, something like that, rather than looking at production runs because maybe that's what you've done. You've come to that conclusion the same way for the last 10 years. We're helping them use machine learning to get around that human bias and better understand, when demand will hit, the magnitude with which it will hit, so that they can have the right amount of product made at the right time. So we find that the biggest barrier is human bias, and it's really fear of the machines kind of making mistakes rather than, phasing things in gradually. People are afraid that it has to be some sort of big bang.
Interesting. Dr. Ahmad Magad, what is your opinion on this?
Okay, your question is about why there is no widespread adoption and the obstacles towards widespread adoption of Industry 4.0. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And some of the issues and problems with respect to realizing it for manufacturers.
Okay. Yeah, I think, while Industry 4.0 is the focus of many industries at the present time, it is certainly by no means a cookie cutter miracle solution, all right? For every company, every business has its own set of issues and challenges that they need to address, and therefore they need to look at the various forms of technology that are available at their disposal and make a wise selection of what works best for them, right? So there are a few reasons, I think, which inhibit the rapid proliferation or widespread adoption of smart manufacturing. First, it is the perceived complex and expensive adoption process. And many SMEs also feel that they do not have the know-how nor the affordability to embark on the journey of smart manufacturing, or IR 4.0, as you put it. They also fear that, investing, this is backed by survey, by the way, when I was at SMF, Singapore Manufacturing Federation. They also fear that investing in training their employees, this may not yield them the return on investment, because here in Singapore, because of extreme labor shortage, their workers may be very quickly poached as they become trained by other firms, you see. Second is the failure of manufacturing firms to define a clear digital roadmap. Many of them simply jump on the bandwagon blindly without even clear understanding of what they want or expect to achieve, or just because some of their friends in the industry are doing so. My third point, I think, is the lack of understanding of the technologies behind digitalization. The data they possess, as Tony has elaborated at length earlier, are siloed, with no clear or suitable platform for integration. There is also the concern, the worry about cybersecurity risks, which may potentially open up their systems to hacking, and this may result in operational disruptions which they may not be able to fix or handle. And fourthly, I think, which is a rather common one, is the lack of digital talent within the organizations to execute their digitalization roadmap. Others also stumble due to lack of coordination within the organization, also unsuitable culture, people have a tidak apa attitude or don't care attitude, and also the lack of readiness to drive change.
Thank you, Doctor. What about you, Yatmi? What is your take on some of the barriers to realizing IR 4.0 for manufacturers? Yatmi,
yeah.
can you just lower your screen so that we can see your face better?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, great.
Okay. I was trying to hide, I think being an SME manufacturer, I think the biggest barrier is that we believe AI must be implemented in a big way. It's a big bang, as Tony said. We don't realize that it can be implemented in phases, and I think not fully comprehending what AI encompasses is also limiting us and making us fearful of embarking on something so huge, because you want to keep things going on and you want to continue your manufacturing process and business goes on. But one would imagine that once you implement AI, maybe the whole thing gets disrupted or something like that. So how does one slowly integrate? And I think there isn't enough, or maybe not enough, not that there isn't enough, but maybe most SMEs are not exposed enough to learn about it, to learn about how to integrate AI into their business. And it's always, of course, down to cost, whether we will get our ROI back and when can we get our ROI back. And like I said earlier, it's about priorities, right? So we need to know that this investment in AI needs to yield us the fastest possible result, because it's going to fight with a lot of other day-to-day priorities. And that's why it's always been, so AI has been seen as the big brother thing, where only the big conglomerates or the big manufacturers do. The smaller SMEs, we probably dabble in a little bit of digitalization here and there, but not in that full comprehensive way which we understand AI to be, much as we know that it is going to be very, very beneficial. That's my take.
Interesting. So, so guys, when we move, or rather, as we move towards the AI and IR 4.0, what does the employee of the future really look like to you in the manufacturing space? Dr. Ahmad, would you like to answer that first?
Yeah. Okay. Let me give it a shot. I think the continuous and increasingly intense digitalization movement will, inevitably encourage manufacturers and service providers alike to move more and more towards a collaborative future between man and machine to produce a higher value per capita. I think that's inevitable. And this trend is likely to force both manufacturers as well as employees in the form of engineers, technicians, and skilled workers to embrace digital technologies, or they risk becoming irrelevant. The universities here in Singapore, polytechnics, and even our ITE, the Institute of Technical Education, they are already continually revising their curricula to equip students with the requisite digital skills of manning machinery and equipment incorporated with robots, smart boxes that are equipped with sensors, actuators, and for that matter also with plenty of other IoT devices, whether about production status or process stability or equipment parameters that control products within tight specifications. So what this means is many conventional tasks will be displaced, and therefore the people will have to be retrained, whether you like it or not, for higher level tasks. So shop floor workers will be upgraded, will have to be upgraded to take on efficiency improvement instead of just pressing buttons here and there. Maintenance technicians will have to deal with asset optimization, how you increase your return on assets, as quickly as efficiently as possible. And logistic operators will have to direct supply chain enhancement activities. So at the core of it will be digitalization and AI skills that workers of the future, employees of the future will have to embrace at all levels. That's the way how I see it.
Thanks, Doctor. And we will definitely be talking more about the skills pipeline next. What about you, Yetmi? What do you think the employee of the future look like to you in the manufacturing?
Oh yeah, okay. The employee of the future, of course, the factory workers, like Dr. Ahmad Magad just said, they all need to be upskilled and they need to know how to operate machines, and they all need to be retrained. So probably see more engineers, more statisticians to be data engineers, data state analysts, data scientists. But I think there's another more important thing is that with machines, I think there's more and more need for people to be more critical, to develop more critical thinking skills, and because that skill will be important in the way they input data into the machines, right? Because we can't just have the machines just running wild. The soft part of the knowledge needs to be inputted as well. So I think people need to have more, we'll probably have to have more look into governance, critical thinking, and they probably need to look into sustainability as well. How to make the machines, people who are more interested in practicing sustainability would be, I think there is a need for people like that.
Yeah, that's true. Because I guess current AI technologies, still can't replace higher cognitive skills, critical thinking skills, or even creativity. Now,
Yeah.
Tony, what about you? What do you think the employee of the future look like to you in manufacturing?
Yeah, thank you. I think the what's been mentioned is right. I think a lot of the redundant activities, repetitive activities, will be kind of lightened up. I think more of the critical thinking skills and more of the collaborative skills will be much more useful. I also think as we have more kind of machine-driven, AI-driven capabilities within a company, more is going to be expected from a company. So people will have to focus more on again, as I said, the business itself rather than the administrative aspects of it or the repetitive aspects of that business. So we'll have more sensors, we'll have other things that businesses are required to do just as a service expectation that they may not be doing today. So I think it's not necessarily all bad for employees. I think there's a lot more to do as we have more tech-enabled capability.
Interesting. Okay, what about okay? Let's take a deeper dive into what do you think the skills pipeline for developing the workforce for the future in manufacturing would look like, to ensure that our people are ready for the disruption in manufacturing. Tony?
That's a great question. I think I don't know that people will necessarily have to be more technical, meaning the person on the shop floor isn't necessarily going to have to be able to fix the device. Mm-hmm. I think they're just going to have to be more specialized. They're going to have to understand more specific aspects about their, say, span of work. But I also think we'll actually have fewer white collar workers. So you have more people actually on the shop floor, in the field, customer facing, so on and so forth, and fewer people in the back office. A lot of the back office activity is repetitive and can be automated. So I think many companies will see less in the back office. We'll see fewer people with, for example, basic business degrees, okay? We'll see more people with really applied degrees so that they can actually do stuff. Like I said, talk to people, put things together, service people, that sort of thing, rather than work in software programs.
Very interesting. What about you, Dr. Ahmad Magad? What do you think the skills pipeline would be?
Yeah, I think my thinking is no different from what Tony has just said. I think ultimately as we shift more and more towards smart manufacturing on the factory floor, people will have to equip themselves more with thinking skills, critical thinking skills, as also said earlier, increase their cognitive thinking capabilities going forward. And I think, you know, the application, the knowledge in applications will take higher precedence as opposed to what people are just doing currently, you know. So by and large, I think is identical to what Tony has said earlier.
Very interesting. Now, we all know that you know, the year 2020 has been really terrible because of COVID-19 and all that, right? So wanted to ask you guys, how has COVID-19 really impacted the manufacturing and global supply chains? You know, could the adoption of Industry 4 and AI, you know, could they have mitigated some of the risk? Yetmi?
Okay. Yeah, I think if you have AI, probably you could have mitigated the risk. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. For instance, maybe with AI, we could have probably predicted whether, for instance, a shop floor is following SOPs. You know, are they taking down necessary details of the contact details of people who are visiting their shops, for instance, and from there they can prevent or they can implement better SOPs to prevent the disease from spreading. Like, you know, for instance, maybe Uniqlo can do that, and straight away they would know, okay, store A is not doing that, and it's probably cause for concern. And then, you know, before the authorities can take action, they would have already sounded down to them, and then make sure that they implement, and then probably retrain the staff to make sure that they comply. That could be one way that they could do that with AI.
Thanks, Yemi. Now, Tony, what about you? You know, how do you think COVID-19 has affected manufacturing, and whether IR4 or AI could have mitigated some of the risk?
I think there are a number of risks that AI could help with. First is, I think sourcing and supply chains have been really impacted, and we're starting to see more regionalization of sourcing and supply chains. So helping, say, supply chain planners and procurement teams understand where they can source in different regions and how that will impact their cost base is one way that could have been impacted. But I also think there are things like digital twins, which we don't do, but I've seen a number of companies who are doing this, where they're monitoring physical spaces so that things like health and safety or operational procedures are being observed. You know, these sorts of things reduce the number of people on a shop floor or in a warehouse, and make sure that the companies aren't missing out on things like safety. So, you know, these types of things can be implemented. They're available today. And I think the pandemic has really opened up the need for it and helped people realize that it's needed much more quickly.
Great, thanks, Tony. Now, Dr. Ahmad Magad, could the adoption of IR4 and AI, could they have, you know, mitigated some of the impact that COVID-19 had on the manufacturing and supply chains?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think first and foremost, let me draw your attention to what I said earlier when the city of Wuhan, which happens to be a manufacturing hub of more than 11 million people, when they decided to lock down for about 8 weeks or so. There was, if you recall, tremendous chaos everywhere. And here in Singapore, I was then still with Singapore Manufacturing Federation. I can recall, you know, how they come and flock to SMF to ask for solutions. Yeah, so I'm sure it affected as many other countries as it did Singapore, when it sank down on manufacturers that they cannot get their parts for assembly into higher order jobs or products, right? So this is in fact a unique experience which has never happened in recent times, right? So it is no surprise that people immediately look everywhere to scramble for capacity, to find ways and means and how they could produce their missing parts that could not come from China. So it represented undoubtedly a very valuable lesson that one cannot just take the prevailing supply chains for granted. So some, as I said earlier, turn to technologies like 3D printing that has in fact never dawned upon many of them before. There was quick realization that the digital versatility and quick prototyping of 3D printing, enabled quick adoption of the technology, and therefore its relevance to a quick response to emergencies. The deployment of AI also allows for more distributed production, right? And also, for that matter, the bringing back of manufacturing quickly into their shores. It then enables, for instance, multi-component consolidation of parts for on-location production, and a higher ratio of productive output to space being utilized. So in other words, it paves the way for smaller micro factories to produce parts more flexibly using robots and AI manufacturing techniques. For instance, for example, the production of robots. This was typically based on making many molds to cast and then machine them using various separate machines. 3D printing helps to reduce the cost of manufacturing such difficult and complex shape components by just 2 or 3 printing processes. So, those are the kinds of solutions that people, in addition to what has been said earlier, that people resort to, recognizing that they can't just simply take their supply chain for granted, being uninterrupted.
Thank you so much. Tony, did you want to add something else on the COVID-19 impact?
Yeah, Peter, thanks. One of the other things that where we saw a really interesting use for AI is helping people understand the path back to kind of business opening and demand. So what we saw in, say, February, March, April, is just panic among manufacturers trying to reconfigure their supply chains, but they didn't really understand how demand would come back. And that's one way that we really helped them, both on the revenue side and on the cost side, is planning, when would those costs bounce back, because there was no demand for a while, and then how would their sales bounce back? We did that extraordinarily well for clients, and they were ready, and they have been ready as demand has come back in different markets without oversupplying or without, say, cutting their workforce too much, as things were pretty negative.
Very interesting. Now, let's talk about the smaller manufacturers or the SMEs. Now, I know that Yetmi has mentioned some of the problems faced by SMEs when it comes to adopting AI and IR 4.0. But I wanted to really hear from both Dr. Ahmad and Tony. Like for example, compared to their larger manufacturer counterpart, right? What are the specific challenges faced by SMEs when it comes to IR4 and AI adoption? Dr. Ahmad, would you like to take this on?
Yeah, sure. I think this is no different from your earlier question about that the journey towards smart manufacturing wasn't easy, or otherwise there would have been much widespread adoption of the technology, right? So to me, the answers are more or less about the same. First and foremost, about the challenges that especially SMEs would face in terms of lack of talent and people who could possibly execute the technology and the know-how on the company's behalf, and the lack of financing, and the lack of clearer definition about their digital roadmap. These are all some of the challenges, the obstacles that SMEs particularly would face. But I would like to share with the audience about a company that I know that has in fact risen to the occasion right amidst this COVID-19 period. This company is a high precision metal parts manufacturer, and it also was quite badly affected by the lockdown and all that. But one approach it took was really to change its business model from being just a conventional automated factory. They do have robots and all that, but they are not intelligent, they're not connected to one another. They bit the bullet and decided really to put in AI components. They invested in equipping the machines with sensors, with a lot of different types of IoT devices, so that they could very quickly draw out information, real-time information from all their equipment. And in doing so, with such quick information available at hand, they were able to very quickly turn things around, and as a result, serve their customers much, much better. So because of that, not only, because capacity is constrained during this period, and because of their investment in this AI, they require a lot less people. They could do lights out production in the night, So that has enabled them to win business in spite of the many difficulties, the many challenges that COVID-19 posed to them.
Thanks, Dr. Ahmad. What about you, Tony? What are the specific AI challenges faced by small manufacturers?
Aside from the capital expenditure, which is a big deal for small companies, but aside from that hurdle, I think small and mid-sized companies are actually much better placed than large companies because they don't have a lot of the organizational hurdles and kind of status quo, kind of entrenched status quo activities. So there's a huge opportunity for small companies to deploy kind of Industry 4.0 and AI assets to scale and to improve their performance. So of course, there's always fear. Of course, there's always fear of changing things. But I think in general, they're much better placed for adoption than larger companies.
Very interesting. Okay, so it looks like we only have about 3 minutes left. So I would really like to conclude this session with your thoughts of the future. Now, I want each of you to look into the crystal ball, like 5 to 10 years ahead, and tell me what are one or two things that really excite you about the future of manufacturing and supply chain management. Doctor?
Yeah, well, I think much of it has been said, but to me, the biggest excitement is the fact that with all these technologies that are available at our disposal, you know, Industry 4.0 combined with artificial intelligence that could enable us to do things a lot more efficiently, a lot more accurately, and much quicker. You know, it really paves the way for us as consumers to enjoy better quality products, higher quality products, to get them at competitive prices and available to us much quicker than ever before. In fact, the choices in consumer products that are being offered today is just so enormous that it makes choices so difficult, you know. So that certainly represents a big excitement to me.
All right. What about you? What about you, Yami? What really excites you about the future of manufacturing?
I think is all the possibilities that could happen. Like Dr. said, is the new products, better products. But I think it's also the customer satisfaction. You know, the knowledge that despite it being so technical and all robotics and everything like that, the human touch, I think, should not be forgotten and will not be forgotten, because people are still the ones manning and inputting all the information. And I think there'll be more and more awareness in people, so that the products that go on onto the shelves is going to be even more sustainable, even more compassionate in certain ways. And the human factor, I hope, and I believe the human factor will not be forgotten.
Nice. I like the word compassionate, actually. Now, okay, what about you, Tony? I'll give you the last word.
Great. Wow, thank you. I think when you look inside out of the factory, I think what we're looking at with a certain amount of automation, my hope is that it leads to happier employees. I think as they're doing more interesting work, I think we'll have a much happier staff base within manufacturing companies. I think from the client side, we'll have much better products and much more consumer choice. And I think a lot of it will be made regionally or locally. So the manufactured goods will be more proximate to the consumption markets. And I think that's better all around for the environment and for the manufacturers themselves.
Cool. Thank you so much. And with that, we have come to the end of the session. Thank you so much for being part of a very enlightening panel of discussion. And obviously the enthusiasm showed and the knowledge shared, right, have really exceeded, I think, everyone's expectations.